Ready? Set. Jump, Max. Get it. Good boy. That's Pax. Piper's the girl. Don't drink that. Hey. When I grow up, I want to be a baseball player. Actually, a car dealer. That's how my grandpa became successful. He worked there for 30 years and he got the dealership because he worked hard.
I have a son, Cayson, and he's 10 years old, and a daughter, Kennedy, who's 8 years old. Cayson is super energetic, playful, loves to be outside. Kennedy's very protective of her older brother too, wants him to be okay and feel good. And they have a very typical brother-sister relationship where they love each other a lot, but they fight each other a lot too.
My name is Kennedy Collins. I'm 8 years old and I'm in 3rd grade. Our relationship is kindness and selfish at the same time. We play fight a lot.
A month before his 3rd birthday, he ran a low-grade fever for a few days, complained of his stomach ache, no other symptoms. After about 2 weeks of him complaining about his stomach ache, we were going to Colorado to visit my parents for a week. So I took him to the pediatrician's office the morning we were headed to Colorado. We were 45 minutes into the flight. We were flying private, so we were able to see and talk to the pilots who were in front of us. They turned around and said air traffic control was calling us a medical evac plane, and they weren't sure why. We said we weren't sure why either, so the pilots checked with air traffic control one more time and turned around and asked if one of the kids had gone to the doctor this morning. And they told us that we had to turn around immediately and land. He could not land in high altitude and he needed to go to Texas Children's immediately for a blood transfusion. The doctors had gotten his blood work back and his hemoglobin level was so low that they were afraid he would lose consciousness if we landed in high altitude. They told us that his preliminary diagnosis was leukemia, but they were going to have to run more tests. The disease was so progressed already that he had close to 80% of his cells were already leukemic cells, and he needed chemotherapy immediately. Before Cayson was diagnosed, his dad, my husband, we were having some marital issues, nothing that I didn't think we could fix and come together again. The diagnosis obviously affects the entire family, and it changes the family dynamics, and it's hard on everybody. And it took a struggling marriage and gave it 0 chances of survival at that point. So we had the diagnosis, and within a year, we were also going through a divorce. The hardest part for Cayson was getting his port accessed. It's uncomfortable. It's scary for him because they are watching needles come at them, and they know there's pressure and there's pain every time it happens. The nurses at Texas Children's do a wonderful job, but it inevitably hurts and is uncomfortable. And there were times, because Cayson was so young and he didn't understand what was happening, he would look at me and cry and scream, "Mommy, why are you doing this?" Because he didn't understand we were doing it to help. I think when you're in the middle of it, you just know you have to get it done. I did not allow myself to break down during the day. It was about keeping the kids' lives going. At night, when they'd be in bed, that's when I would have my moments of breaking down and allowing myself to feel the reality of things. But then you wake up the next day and you keep going and pressing on because you don't have a choice. You have to be strong and be there for the kids and get him through it. So we went in for a normal clinic visit. Our oncologist, Dr. Dreyer, walked in and she said, "I have great news. The protocol has been changed. Instead of 3.5 years of treatment for boys, It is recommended now we only do 2.5 years, and since Cayson has been in remission for over 2 years, today is the last day of treatment. And we got to walk out of that hospital that day knowing we were completely done with treatment. He started getting so much energy. He wanted to run and play and be outside all the time, play baseball, play with friends, go fishing. And I felt like I was watching my children have a normal childhood. 18 months into normal life, we went to our first 6-month appointment where we had 6 months of not going to clinic, and the blood test came back and showed that the cancer had returned. And it was a whole new realization because he was almost 8 now, and having to tell him the cancer was back was devastating. Kennedy was 6 and about to start kindergarten. So when I told her, she asked if her brother was gonna be okay, and she said, I just want my brother to be home every night in his room.
When he goes to the hospital, I want him to stay home with me a lot, and he's couldn't at all. He had no choice. You just have to go through it, and they'll make it. They'll always be there for you, no matter what.
This is why I like being outdoors, because I've been sitting in the hospital bed. I don't know, it feels like you've been there for a year. It feels like you're trapped in one room, and it just feels like that. That's what it feels like, a lot.
While Cayson was inpatient, he was inpatient for 94 days throughout the transplant process. I was driving back and forth from the medical center and home twice a day to make sure I could pack Kennedy's lunch, get her off to school every morning before I was at the hospital all day, come home, put her in bed at night, go back, see Cayson. I was doing that every day to make sure I could be there for both of them the best I could. When the cancer comes back that soon after finishing treatment, your only option is a bone marrow transplant. So I knew I was a potential donor. We were hoping to get the 10 out of a 10 match from Germany. Unfortunately, it was still COVID times. We weren't able to get his cells to the medical center in time for his transplant. I was told on the Wednesday before his transplant on Friday that I was now his donor, and we knew that we were gonna fight this together. I met Brittany in 2017, and I got introduced to what she does with Sky High. When we were inpatient this last round, we really saw the impact that they have. They really focused on the emotional, fun, family stability side of things. I think our favorite Sky High moment was when Brittany called and said, we want to take you on our new adventure program. We drove to the Spitzer Ranch in Corpus and met Jody and Colin Spencer, who were some of the nicest people I've ever known.
So we had our room, and there was 2 bunk beds, 1 TV. Also, he shot deer and oryx. It's an African deer, kind of. The guy that we went hunting with was Parker McCollum. He was nice, fun, and shot a big deer. And he let us go to a free Parker McCollum concert. If you don't know Parker McCollum, you should listen now.
It was the best weekend we had spent as a family in the 7 years we had been going through this. He got to do things that he would have never experienced had it not been for Sky High. I tell him all the time his story is gonna be wonderfully written when he's an adult, and I know that everything's gonna be okay.
I'm going home, yay!
We're 3 years past his bone marrow transplant, and his side effects are finally starting to slow down, and we're getting a glimpse of that normal life we had for a short time, and I think it's gonna come back and stay for a long time now. And we are ready for it.
Air traffic control came over the radio and asked us directly, do you have a patient on board? I replied and said, no, we don't have a patient on board. And they asked me to stand by, and so we kind of were talking about what that could be. And within probably 2 minutes, they came back and said, do you have a child on board? At that point, I replied, yes, we do have a child on board. Probably within 30 seconds, they came back and said, you guys need to return home, that the child needs a blood transfusion immediately. Do not land in Colorado. We had to make a 180-degree turn, so obviously I knew that Courtney and her father were in the back thinking, why are we turning around? So then I had to get my thoughts together on what to say. The first thing I told her was that everything was going to be okay, and that we had to go back because there was some type of complication with the blood work. And I didn't see Courtney again for over a year after that.
So 1.5 years after Cayson was diagnosed, we were in maintenance, and it was giving us a little bit of breathing room, not as many hospital stays. And I felt that I was ready to do something for me, to have an outlet. I have been a pilot since I was 15, and I wanted to get back to enjoying aviation. So I was at the airport, checking on an airplane, getting ready for a flight, and I had another pilot approach me and recognize me and say, I have been following you guys on Facebook. I was your pilot when Cayson was diagnosed. I was the one who had to turn your airplane around and tell you that Cayson had to go to the hospital. And he had known about the leukemia diagnosis before I did, but he didn't want to say that to us on the airplane. We started talking, and he's now my husband. Yeah, that was a twist in all of the story that I was not expecting. I was perfectly happy with it being the kids and I at the time.
Just life works funny sometimes, I mean, I wasn't looking for a lifelong relationship with Courtney, and it just happened, and it couldn't be more perfect. Even as tough as things have been and some of the challenges we've had to overcome, I feel very blessed to be a part of her life, and my hope is that she feels the same way.
Looking back, I don't think I could have handled the relapse and the bone marrow transplant as well as I did if I didn't have that support. He has been a strength that we all didn't know we needed. I got to be that person finally that was able to break down and have all these emotions because I had a support system. Overall, I'm very grateful. Our world is completely different, but I think it's better than what I would have imagined it to be.